Hey, handsome, I can make your fiancé walk again. On her own feet, a barefoot black girl, maybe 5 years old, standing with her arms crossed like a tiny storm had wandered in from the sea. Her braids shimmered with gold beads, her skin kissed by the sun, and her eyes, they didn't belong to a child. They belonged to something older, wilder, like the sea had given her up just for today. Baron blinked. What did you just say? The girl smiled, tilting her head toward the horizon, where the Bosphorus met the sky. You want to see the magic? Hey, handsome! The voice drifted on the warm, salty breeze like a secret carried by the waves. Baron stopped dead in his tracks, his hand gripping the handles of Elif's wheelchair a little tighter. He turned around, slowly. There she was, a little black girl, no more than 5 years old, standing barefoot on the sun-warmed marble of the Istanbul seaside promenade. Her skin glistened like polished amber under the late afternoon sun. Tiny gold beads threaded through her braided hair caught the light with every subtle movement, sparkling like distant stars. But it was her eyes, deep, wide, and ancient beyond her years, that held Baron's gaze captive. They were not the eyes of a child, but of someone who had seen centuries roll by, someone who listened not only to people but to the sea itself. I can make your fiancé walk again, on her own feet. The words were soft but full of certainty, as if the girl spoke the truth of the tides themselves. Baron blinked. What did you just say? His voice cracked a little, disbelief mingling with hope and confusion. The girl smiled, crooked and full of mischief and promise. She tilted her head toward the shimmering Bosphorus, where seagulls wheeled and called, the endless horizon stretching between Europe and Asia. You want to see the magic? Elif, sitting quietly in her wheelchair nearby, looked up from where she had been staring down at the weathered planks of her lap. The sun warmed her pale face, but her eyes, heavy with weeks of pain and silence, flickered now with a fragile spark. It had been 9 long months since the car accident took her ability to walk. Doctors had said it was permanent. Therapies hadn't helped. Friends stopped visiting. Baron had spent every day trying to accept her new reality, struggling silently to hold her grief without breaking. But this small stranger's words stirred something deeper inside him. Something he thought was long gone. Baron swallowed hard. Are you serious, little one? How could you possibly make her walk again? The girl's gaze never wavered. I'm not magic. She reached into the pocket of her bright yellow dress and pulled out a napkin, damp from the sea air, tied neatly with a green thread. Inside was a small heart-shaped stone, smooth and shimmering with salt crystals, and a bundle of dried mint and lavender. No magic, she said, but the sea listens. It knows what hurts, and it helps if you ask. Baron glanced at Elif, then back at the girl. He laughed nervously, unsure whether to be amused or scared. The sea? What is this? Some kind of story? The girl stepped closer. Her bare feet barely made a sound on the marble. It's not a story, she said. It's the truth. You don't have to believe me, but if you want, you can watch. Elif reached out with trembling hands and took the napkin from the girl. Her fingers brushed the stone and herbs, feeling the cool dampness. She smelled the mint and lavender. The scent was faint but somehow familiar. It brought back memories of summer days before everything changed, the sound of waves, the smell of tea in the morning, the feeling of running freely through fields. Baron looked around nervously. People were beginning to notice. Some tourists whispered to each other, pointing at the strange child speaking to a woman in a wheelchair. A group of fishermen paused their work nearby, their eyes curious but respectful. The sun dipped lower. The breeze grew cooler and carried the faint cries of seagulls. Why are you here? Baron asked the girl quietly. She smiled again, more gently this time. Because sometimes the sea sends someone who needs to listen. Elif closed her eyes, breathing deeply. She felt the stone warm in her hands. A faint pulse, like a heartbeat, seemed to echo through her fingers. Just sit still, the girl whispered. And when the moon comes out, breathe in the night. Let the sea's magic fill your bones. Baron shook his head, still half in disbelief, but also desperate to hold on to anything that might bring back the woman he loved. The little girl turned toward the sea again, her voice softer now, almost a prayer. Wake up, legs. Remember how to run. Remember how to dance. You're just sleeping, not broken. Elif's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, she saw only the endless blue, the shining horizon, and the tiny figure framed against the sun. A single tear slipped down her cheek. Baran whispered, "Can you feel anything?" Elif nodded, her voice barely a breath. Something. Twitching. The promenade was still, the city sounds fading into the background. Only the waves dared to break the silence. Baran reached down and held Elif's hand. "We'll try again tomorrow." The girl smiled and waved a small hand before disappearing down the promenade, her yellow dress flickering like a flame in the twilight. Baran watched her go, awe and hope mingling in his chest. And somewhere deep inside, he thought he heard the sea whisper back. That night, beneath a sky dusted with stars, Elif lay awake. The herbs and the napkin still rested on her bedside table. The stone warmed slightly in the moonlight. She thought of the little girl, her voice, and the impossible promise. Outside, the sea called softly, and Elif closed her eyes, willing herself to believe in the magic of the waves. "Our legs aren't broken. They're just sleeping." That evening, as the sun dipped behind the minarets and the call to prayer floated softly across the Bosphorus, the seaside promenade began to quiet. The tourists had gone, the street vendors packed away their spices and sweets, and the lights of the cafes twinkled like fireflies reflected on the water. Elif sat quietly in her wheelchair, wrapped in a thin shawl, her eyes fixed on the little packet Amara had handed her earlier that day. It was a simple thing, a napkin carefully folded and tied with green thread, cradling a handful of herbs and a small, heart-shaped stone that seemed to pulse softly with warmth, as if it had absorbed the light of the sun itself. Baran sat beside her, his usual skepticism replaced by something closer to wonder. He watched as Elif slowly opened the bundle, the scent of fresh mint and lavender immediately filling the air between them. The fragrant herbs seemed to awaken something deep inside Elif, stirring memories of sunlit gardens from her childhood, long before the accident. "Almara told you to smell it when the moon appears," Baran said quietly, glancing out to the darkening sky. Elif nodded, breathing in deeply. The cool night air mingled with the warmth of the herbs. "She said to put the stone under the wheelchair," Elif whispered, "and believe." Baran frowned. "Believe? What exactly are we supposed to believe?" Elif's lips curved into a faint smile. "The first in months. That there's still hope." They waited together as the city grew still, the only sound the gentle lapping of the sea against the ancient stones beneath them. When the moon rose, a silver crescent hanging low over the water, Elif reached down, trembling, and slipped the heart-shaped stone beneath the chair's frame. Baran noticed how the stone seemed to glow faintly in the moonlight. He shook his head, unwilling to give in to superstition, yet unable to deny the strange sense of calm settling over them both. Hours passed, and Baran finally nodded off, his head leaning against the cool metal of the wheelchair. But Elif stayed awake, eyes fixed on her legs as if willing them to listen. Then, almost imperceptibly, her toes twitched. A sudden rush of adrenaline shot through Baran. He jolted awake, staring in disbelief. "Elif, did you just move your toes?" Her eyes widened. She bent forward, reaching for her feet with tentative fingers, feeling muscles that hadn't stirred in months. "I don't know," she whispered, tears beginning to blur her vision. "I think I did." Baran didn't speak. He simply helped her sit up straighter, a mix of disbelief and cautious hope making his heart pound. The next morning, as the call to prayer echoed again across Istanbul's rooftops, something miraculous happened. Elif, guided by Bahran's steady hands, stood with the aid of her crutches for the first time in nearly a year. It wasn't perfect. Her legs wobbled like a newborn colt. Every movement was agony. But with each tiny step, a spark grew brighter in her eyes, hope blossoming like the spring flowers on the Bosphorus shores. "Bahran," she breathed. "I think I'm walking." Bahran's throat tightened. He wanted to shout for joy, but the moment was fragile, sacred. Nearby, fishermen gathered by their boats paused to watch the strange scene unfold. "I saw that little girl again this morning," said one, his eyes still wide with awe. She gave us coffee and told us that the body remembers how to heal if we listen to it. Another added, she called herself a sea daughter, someone who carries the sea's magic in her hands. Baron frowned. Who is she really? The fishermen shook their heads. No one knows, but we believe she's part of the old stories, spirits of the water. Healers born from the waves. Baron returned to Elif's side. Watching her attempt another step, the sun warmed the ancient city, the call to prayer fading as merchants prepared their stalls. Elif smiled through tears. I never thought I'd see this day. Baron looked at her, hope blossoming within his own chest. Maybe, he said quietly, she really is magic. For the first time since the accident, Elif felt whole, not because of doctors or machines, but because a child had reminded her that sometimes healing begins not with medicine, but with belief. That night, Baron sat on the dock, staring out at the endless water and the moonlight dancing on the waves. He thought about Amara, the little girl who spoke to the sea, who held the power to remind a broken woman that her legs were not lost, only sleeping, and somewhere in the distance, he could swear he heard the faintest whisper on the wind. Walk, walk. The morning sun spilled golden over the Bosphorus, lighting up the bustling promenade with a softness that seemed almost sacred. Fishermen arranged their nets, vendors shouted their calls, and families strolled beneath fluttering flags that danced lazily in the gentle sea breeze. Elif woke that day to a sensation she hadn't felt in months. Movement. It was subtle at first, a faint tingle in her toes that felt like a whisper from a distant dream. Then, as she lay still in bed, she tested her right foot, flexing it carefully beneath the thin white sheets. Her heart skipped a beat. It moved. Not just a twitch, but a deliberate, controlled motion. She curled her toes, then spread them apart like a child testing a new skill. Elif's breath caught in her throat. She reached over to the bedside table for her phone and called Baron, her voice trembling. Baron, I think I moved my foot. There was silence on the other end. Then a sharp intake of breath. I'm coming, he said, his voice thick with disbelief and hope. Within minutes, Baron was at her side, his eyes scanning her foot as if trying to find a trick, a hidden string pulling her toes. But there was nothing, only the quiet miracle of her slowly waking limbs. Show me, he whispered. Elif, with a mixture of excitement and fear, flexed her foot again, then her ankle. She pressed down on the mattress, feeling muscles respond. For the first time since the accident. Could it be? Baron started, but stopped himself. Elif shook her head. No doctor or therapist has ever seen this. Maybe it's the girl. Baron looked at her skeptically. Yet a glimmer of something like belief began to spark in his eyes. They didn't know where to look first, but the question lingered in their minds. Where was the little girl who had come with that strange promise? The tiny healer who had spoken to the sea? They searched the cafe, the market stalls, and the winding alleys near the waterfront. But Amara was nowhere to be found. It was as if she had vanished into the mist that curled over the water at dawn. The only clue was a small scrap of paper folded carefully beneath a weathered fishing boat. Unfolding it, Baron read the words in neat, looping script. The sea listens. Those who listen to it can heal. You must listen too. Baron's fingers trembled as he read aloud, the words feeling like a key unlocking something deep inside. That afternoon, word of Elif's stirring progress spread quietly through the neighborhood. Locals who had seen the mysterious girl began sharing their own stories. A group of Syrian fishermen who often worked near the docks approached Baron and Elif with a knowing look. You seek the child? One asked in accented Turkish. Baron nodded. Yes. Have you seen her? The men smiled softly. Yes, we have. She came early this morning, just as the sun rose. She gave us coffee and spoke of the sea's power to mend wounds. Coffee? Baron echoed, confused. The fisherman laughed. Yes, strong and sweet. She said you must believe that the body remembers how to stand. The sea never forgets, another fisherman added. She is not like other children. She is a Danish KZA, a sea daughter. A healer sent from the depths. Baron's heart pounded in his chest. A sea daughter? Yes, the first man confirmed. Not a tourist, not a traveler. Something ancient. Something older than the stones beneath our feet. Baron glanced toward the shimmering Bosphorus, the water sparkling like shattered glass beneath the sun. Elif, wheeling slowly beside him, stared at the fisherman. "Do you think she can heal me?" The men exchanged glances. "She helped me," said one quietly, holding up a calloused hand. "I could not feel my fingers after a storm. Now, I can grip my nets again." Elif's lips quivered. "How?" "The same way she helped you, by reminding the body that it still belongs to the spirit. The sea is a bridge between what is broken and what can be whole." As the fisherman spoke, Baron felt a deep calm settle over him. The skepticism that had kept him distant from hope was melting away. This was no ordinary child, no passing miracle. This was something sacred. Over the next days, Elif's progress astonished everyone. She began to sit upright without assistance. Her legs, weak but willing, started to bear weight when she tried to stand. The doctors who examined her were baffled, their clinical reports filled with disbelief. "Some kind of spontaneous neurological recovery," one said. "Extremely rare." But Baron and Elif knew better. It was more than science. It was magic. It was faith. It was the sea's quiet song through a child's whispered prayer. One evening, as the call to prayer echoed over the water and the sky turned soft with twilight, Baron returned to the spot where Amara had first appeared. He knelt and traced the outline of a small footprint pressed into the damp sand, too small for any ordinary child. His voice was barely a whisper. "Thank you." Just then, a gentle breeze stirred the air, carrying the scent of salt and mint. Baron closed his eyes and felt, deep within his bones, that the sea's daughter was still near. Elif, sitting nearby in her wheelchair, smiled for the first time in months. "Do you think she'll come back?" Baron asked. Elif nodded. "She's part of the sea now, and the sea never forgets those who listen." As the waves kissed the shore, Elif felt her spirit rise with them. She was no longer broken. She was healing body and soul. And somewhere, beneath the endless blue, the little girl with magic in her eyes smiled too. The morning light filtered softly through the windows of Elif's modest apartment near the seaside. The sounds of Istanbul, the distant calls of street vendors, the rhythmic crashing of waves against the harbor wall, and the faint echo of a prayer call wove together in a familiar, comforting symphony. But inside, something was stirring anew. Elif sat upright on the edge of her bed, the crutches resting beside her like silent promises. For months, those wooden supports had been distant strangers, reminders of what her body had lost. Today, however, they called to her not as symbols of limitation, but as tools of hope. Her hands trembled slightly as she grasped one of the crutches, feeling the smooth wood beneath her fingers. She glanced toward the open window, where the Bosphorus shimmered under a clear blue sky, then down at her legs, still weak, but no longer lifeless. Baron stood quietly behind her, watching with a mixture of awe and nervous excitement. He'd been with her every step since the day the little girl had appeared by the sea, whispering secrets no one else could hear. Now, for the first time, Elif was willing to try. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. Elif nodded, biting her lip. "For her, for me, for us, together." They moved slowly to the doorway. The familiar wheels of the chair clicked against the tiled floor as Baron helped her stand, steadying her with gentle hands. Her legs protested with every inch she bore weight, muscles aching as if waking from a long, deep sleep. But beneath the pain was something stronger, a spark of determination. She took a tentative step forward. One, then another. Baron's breath hitched. "Elif, I know," she interrupted, voice trembling with disbelief and hope. "But it's only the beginning." Outside, the sun warmed the narrow streets, and neighbors paused in surprise to see her really standing without help. The news spread quickly along the waterfront and beyond. People stopped their daily routines to witness the miracle of Elif's slow, steady steps. But the magic was not just in Elif's body, it was in what the little girl had told her, that healing was a gift to be shared. A few blocks from Elif's apartment, a boy named Kamal sat alone on the steps of a small mosque, his crutches leaning awkwardly against the wall. A car accident had left him with shattered legs, and like Elif, doctors had said he might never walk again. That afternoon, as Elif wheeled herself toward the sea, she noticed Kamal watching her intently. Their eyes met. Elif smiled a smile born from months of pain, but now shining with the fierce light of hope. Kamal's face lit up, but then he looked away, ashamed. Elif stopped beside him. "Kamal," she said softly, "come with me." He hesitated, then nodded. Together, they walked to the spot by the water where the little girl had first appeared. The breeze carried the scent of salt and mint, as if the sea itself was welcoming them. From behind a stone wall, a small figure emerged. Amara, barefoot and radiant in the afternoon sun. The little girl held a small wooden boat painted in bright colors. "This is for you," Amara said, extending the toy toward Kamal. He took it, eyes wide with wonder. "Why me?" Amara's gaze was steady and kind. "Because healing is not just for those who receive. It's for those who give too." Elif knelt beside the boy, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder. "She's right, Kamal. If you stand, it must be so others can stand too." Kamal looked at the boat, then at Elif, then finally met Amara's eyes for a moment. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a small but determined effort, Kamal rose from the steps, supported by Elif and his crutches. It was slow. It was shaky, but it was real. Around them, the people gathered, neighbors, fishermen, shopkeepers cheering softly. Baran watched from a distance, tears in his eyes. The magic had spread. That evening, as the sun dipped behind Istanbul's skyline, Elif sat beside the water with Baran, her legs resting on the cool stones. She turned to him. "Do you think she'll come back?" Baran smiled. "I think she never really left." Elif nodded. "Healing is not just a gift, it's a responsibility." Baran squeezed her hand. "And you're ready." Together, they watched as the city lights flickered on, reflecting like stars in the Bosphorus. Somewhere, beneath the endless sky and the vast sea, Amara's spirit lingered, a reminder that sometimes the smallest among us carry the greatest power. The evening air was cool and fragrant, with the scent of the sea mingled with the faint aroma of roasting chestnuts from a nearby vendor. Istanbul's sky stretched wide above them, painted in deep indigos and specks of early stars, while the Bosphorus glimmered softly like liquid silver beneath the moonlight. Elif sat quietly on the stone steps by the water's edge, her legs folded beneath her now with strength she hadn't imagined possible weeks before. Beside her, Baran wrapped a warm shawl around her shoulders, his eyes reflecting the glow of lanterns and hope. They had come a long way from the desperate days when Elif's wheelchair had been a permanent throne and her smile a rare visitor. Now, thanks to a mysterious little girl named Amara who seemed more spirit than flesh, they were living proof that miracles could happen in the most unexpected places. "Do you think she'll ever come back?" Elif asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Baran looked out across the water, remembering the small footprints in the sand, the soft voice promising healing. "I think she's always been here," he said slowly. "In the breeze, in the waves, in the quiet moments we almost miss." Elif's smile was gentle but fierce. "She gave us more than magic. She gave us courage." Just then, a soft voice called out from the shadows, "Elif, Baran." They turned toward the sound and saw a familiar small figure stepping out from behind the low stone wall. Amara's eyes sparkled under the moonlight. She was holding a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Baran moved forward quickly. "Amara, we've been looking everywhere for you." The little girl smiled, shy but steady. "I'm never far." She carefully untied the bundle and revealed several smooth stones, each shimmering faintly as if holding the sea's own light. "These are for you," Amara said. "Tokens from the sea, reminders that healing lives inside you, and it grows when shared." Elif reached out and took one, feeling warmth spread through her fingers. "Thank you," she said softly. Amara's gaze flicked between them both. "The magic wasn't just mine. It's ours. Yours, mine, everyone's." Baran nodded. "We felt that from the start. You brought us back to life." The little girl smiled wider, her energy like a gentle tide. "Sometimes," she whispered, "we forget that the sea never forgets." It remembers every prayer, every hope, every step taken toward the light. Elif looked at her legs, now strong and steady beneath her. I never thought I'd walk again, she said. But she reminded me that sometimes we just need someone or something to show us the way. Amara nodded solemnly. I'm glad I could help. The three of them sat quietly together, watching as the city around them pulsed with life. The sounds of laughter and music drifting on the night air. Baran broke the silence. What will you do now? Amara shrugged. I follow the sea, wherever it calls. Elif's eyes filled with tears. Will we see you again? The little girl's smile was a secret. Maybe, if you listen. And with that, Amara slipped away into the night, as quietly and mysteriously as she had come. Baran took Elif's hand. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Elif nodded, strength rising in her chest like the tide, because the magic was no longer just a dream. It was real, and it was theirs.